Hello and welcome to the WorkWise for Screen podcast, created to help our screen industries better look after all the people their businesses depend on.
And stay on safe legal ground. It's part of a growing collection of practical resources and guidance that you can dip into without it taking you forever or costing you anything. It's supported by the BFI, awarding national lottery funding.
We'll be talking with people across production, distribution and exhibition, animation, VFX and gaming about the challenges to well-being we face when deadlines and budgets are tight, and how, most importantly, to improve things. We are your hosts, Tacita Small from the Small HR Company, the HR for Entertainment one,
and Keith Arrowsmith, the legal one, a creative industries solicitor and program director for WorkWise for Screen. One of the things that I might like to explore today, Tacita, is what do we all find fulfilling? Is that the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning? What's top of your list? Don't say coffee.
Fulfilling. I think fulfillment for me when it comes to work is making an impact. So if I can make an impact in someone's day positively or constructively, then that for me is a good day. Sharing what I know, and also, I suppose, learning the perspective of others and how I can, if they're coming to me for advice, how I can help influence their decision making, or if they can show me another way of doing things, I'm open. So I suppose they are the things that make good work for me.
There's a little bit of research that's come out in the last couple of days that says you know whether you're going to have a good day in the first 10 minutes.
Really? You know what I would say to that, though? I think that you as an individual are in control and you can decide. I learned this a while ago. You can decide whether you're going to have a good day or not. So if you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad. But if you say, it started off a bit rough and I'm going to stop that now and I'm going to change, I'm positively going to think about how I'm going to change this and make a choice to change it, you can also do that as well.
We're going to be in for a treat today because we're about to be joined by Jonny Gifford. And his world is that research. His world is making sure that we have access to some real quality information that we can rely on. And he's been involved in helping us create WorkWise for Screen. So he's got a sense of what might be helpful to people who are going to be listening. So let's say hi to Jonny and find out what makes his days go with a swing. Let's set the stage for today's conversation, going beyond quick wins and asking what it really takes to build businesses that last. Jonny Gifford is a Principal Research Fellow at the Institute for Employment Studies, and he's been closely involved in the research and development for our WorkWise programme. He brings valuable expertise into what makes work sustainable, fair and fulfilling, and his work focuses on good working practices, which are not only ethical, but crucial for long-term business success. So Jonny, thanks for coming along and being part of the podcast today. I want to know what makes your job fulfilling.
So I'm a researcher. I'm a kind of sociologist of work. And the variety of being able to sort of pick up different projects, get to understand different aspects of my sort of core area, which is all about, the world of work and employment, but also to have an impact. I think, we all want to be able to see like the fruits of our labor in some respect. And often I don't always see it, I sort of submit a report and it goes up into the ether, but sometimes you do hear people saying, I used your research and it improved something in our organization. And that for me is just fantastic when I see that. So I think in my context, I look at the world of work and employment through, in particular, the lens of the dynamics between people, but in groups. So I focus on organizations. I bring into that my work as well, not just a sociology view, but also a bit of psychology. So psychology of what makes us tick at work, what our kind of needs are as individuals, what motivates us and so on. But in particular, what I'm looking at is questions like, what does a good job look like for different people? What are the factors that drive good work? What's the relationship between good work and good performance or productivity? But in particular, I suppose the sociology angle is looking at things through a kind of structural lens. It's like the interaction of people in groups.
So looking at that interaction, what do you mean by good? Where do you start with this kind of premise that we all want to have a good working relationship?
I suppose I'd start with a couple of things. The simplest answer is that good work is kind of what it says on the tin. It's like, so there's the great adage that if you want someone to do a good job, give them a good job to do. And I think that's something that we can all relate to in a meaningful way, even if it sounds a bit vague. But the key message there is that good work is subjective. What makes a good job for you may not necessarily in all ways make a good job for me, because we've all got different priorities, and those priorities can shift at different life stages and so on. Some of us will have a greater driver for pay than others. Some of us will have a greater driver for having sort of meaningful work, but all of these can be components. So I suppose a fuller answer is that good work isn't a clearly defined thing that you can capture in a single metric, but it's a mosaic of a number of different things. As part of the WorkWise for Screen program, we identified 6 core areas. So firstly, contracts. So like, are you paid fairly? Do you have the security that you need to make a living? Secondly, management. So bosses are just so influential in our experience of working life in so many ways. So organizations need the right people management skills. Third thing is welfare. So well-being, health. We want jobs that are physically and mentally healthy, and that includes having a reasonable work-life balance. Fourth area that we identified was skills and careers. So we want jobs that are not just good now, but that give us opportunities to develop, to have kind of meaningful careers. Then we've got good relationships at work. You could say everything's a relationship, but I think it's worth focusing on it in its own right. We want team relationships where we've got supportive, healthy teams, you've got constructive relationships, and we don't have things like bullying and harassment and all of the ills that we're familiar with, discrimination. And I suppose discrimination then takes us on to our last one, which is diversity, which in a way you could say is not a component of good work, but like I say, these things aren't clearly defined. It's more like the distribution of good work. It's the question of who has good work, and is there equity in who has good work. So we know that things are often not equal. So we need to try and work out how we can break down barriers, combat discrimination, and ensure that good work is accessible to everyone. So I think that, there's lots of other things too, but I think that's a pretty good starting point.
I really like that. And as you're saying those words and those steps and those levels, I kind of drew it as a pyramid. And if you look at it in the same way, you maybe look at Maslow, and you are looking at, okay, good for me looks like my contractual obligations, the job that I say that I'm going to do. And the next up from that is my leader or my manager. Quite often that's where good work can stop. So getting to the rest of it can be really tricky, especially if you're a lone worker or used to working alone as a contractor, or you're used to working in a variety of teams. There's only so much you can control. How can we help people that are in charge of others to look at what good looks like for a variety of people? And I say that because my good and your good is different, and that's okay. But if I'm permanently judged by your good, how do I get to the next bit, which is about my welfare, my health, and my well-being and stuff at work?
I agree with you. There is something about a pyramid. Maslow's research on the hierarchy of needs is a classic example of something which was a bit over-egged. So it's a nice idea, but it's not actually very well evidenced. So then you've got, if you follow your idea of a pyramid, you've got the kind of higher order things. It's also important for us to be able to progress, to have the kind of skills, career development, also to have work where we can get a sense of meaning from it. So we can see a kind of line of sight between what we're doing on a day-to-day basis and what the organization's aiming for. and so on. So it is two different things, and I think that we need to deal with them in different ways. So when it comes to sort of basic minima, we've got government legislation that protects people from the worst of jobs that either shouldn't exist or should come with particular protections. This has been described in different ways. One of the ways in which it's been described is like 3D jobs, as in dirty, dangerous, and difficult. So you've got, certain classes of jobs like that. So we need those legal protections. And I know, Keith, you're an employment lawyer, so that's in particular where that angle comes in. And then you've got the kind of higher order stuff, and you can't really legislate for a lot of this. So what it needs is an approach that's built around a conversation, and it needs to be a kind of an open conversation about what individuals want. But it also, I think, we can draw on decades of research as to from the likes of sociology, psychology, and other disciplines that tells us about what makes for good work, what motivates people, for example, and so on.
Jonny, you said something there about having a kind of culture, that kind of shared vision of what we're all coming together to do as a team. I'm thinking especially for those that might be new to the industry or those that are just starting up their first production. What can we do to help people find that vision and share it with the team?
So I think one of the things I'm always really conscious of when we think about production companies is that we're often talking about really small organizations, like micro organizations, less than 10 employees. So you've got some natural kind of benefits from that. People who work in small organizations are often happier in many ways because, for example, it's easier to be able to understand how your work fits in with the wider vision and objectives of the organization as a whole. For example, there can be more flex in what kind of tasks you do, so you can kind of chip into more different things, so it can be more naturally skilled. But equally, there can be pressures, and I think that one of the key things to get started for small organizations is to work towards good people management. So things like one-to-one meetings where you're checking in with individuals, you're thinking, for example, about asking them about their workload and their well-being, and not just in a very shallow, cursory, how you doing? Fine, thanks. Okay, project 1, where are we at on this deadline? But genuine checking in. How are you doing? How are you doing with your workloads? How are you doing in your well-being, your health? Possibly too, is there anything outside of your work? In fact, not even possibly. I think it should be there. It's like, is there anything outside of your work which is going on at the moment, which is an issue for you at the moment, which might affect how you feel about your work too? And I think that regular checking in is kind of like the bedrock of looking after people in work. So they've got a critical role in looking after individuals, giving work updates. One of the things that we've suggested is to, if you're giving someone a new task, then see whether another task needs to be taken away. Don't just assume that you can pile on more and more jobs on people.
How can we help people who manage others, as you've just kind of described? How can we help them to make this a priority? Because you're right, you're wearing multiple hats, and your people hat is the biggest and the heaviest, and the one that comes with the most, I suppose, responsibility, being in charge of others. So how can we help bring this to the fore for people who will say things like, oh, I don't do HR, or I'm not good at the people bit, or I don't like that bit, when actually it's part of their role.
Inherent in promoting like the good work view is taking a longer term view. So to say, in order for us to be sustainable, both as an organization and as an industry, and as a national industry or set of creative industries, we need to treat people well enough so that they can work well now without burning out, so that they're paid enough that they can afford to stay in the industry, so that they feel motivated and recognized enough they really want to stay in the industry and want to give of their best, and that they can build a genuine career path by developing new skills and knowledge and putting them to use. All of those are a kind of mutual gains view, and that's what we need to hold on to, and it needs a longer term lens.
So it's easy for me to tell whether my business is doing well in the context of making money. You know, my bank manager will tell me whether I'm really good at that or not. But how do we start measuring those other metrics of working well? And because of that kind of long-term lens, it's really hard to spot.
So in larger organizations, and I guess we're speaking to some people who will be working in larger organizations too, you'll often have management information. So like your standard collected information that will include things like resignation rates and how long people are staying in their jobs and the amount of time people are taking off on sick leave and so on, the number of complaints coming in, disciplinaries, grievances, and so on. So that's all really useful information for for your larger organizations in particular. I suppose, in smaller organizations, you get a qualitative sense of all of those things. You can see, if one or two people are experiencing sort of negative things in those areas, then you can see it very immediately. As well as you're saying, Keith, looking at your balance sheet.
I could just push you a little bit on that, Johnny, because especially in smaller organizations, it might be really hard to have those kind of honest conversations with the person who is paying you, because you want the next job and you don't want to be seen to be the one that makes trouble or the one that, raises concerns, because I want an easy life and I want to be involved in the next project and the project after that. So how do you encourage that honest dialogue to make sure that things are raised at a time where a difference can be made, rather than just someone leaving and finishing the job and never hearing from them again, which increases my costs as a business? I get that, because I'm going to have to be continually looking for new people for my new projects if I'm not doing this well. But if no one's telling me I'm not doing it well, it might be a bit hidden. It might be a bit difficult to take on some of the points that you're suggesting today.
One thing that I think can help across the board is not just talking to managers and employers. And I think that this is something that often happens, is that we think about trying to improve the experience of employees, or the quality of working life. And we do that by focusing on leadership development. So really, we're only talking to the managers saying, this is how you should lead people. This is how you should manage people. These are the sort of important psychological factors. These are the practical things you can do. What we also need to do is to vocalize or articulate the expectations or how things work, how things can work well and poorly, so that everyone can see it. So I think that WorkWise for Screen has got a big role in this, in being able to say, look, here are different aspects of what it means to have a good job. We can articulate them so that other people can then articulate them in their conversations.
When we're looking for our next generation of people who are going to work on my next project, where do I find them? They're not all going to be my friends.
Well, they're not going to be in your black book. They're not going to be in your phone.
Yeah, well,
definitely.
Lawyers don't have any friends, so that's an easy one for me to say. But okay, Johnny, is there a kind of sense of how can we help people do that recruitment bit right?
Yeah, I think that many business leaders will be aware that we need to sort of broaden our talent pools. We need to look for talent in unfamiliar places. Is one of the ways that we put this to get ahead. You don't want an organization which is full of people who, especially in creative industries, full of people who just look and think and talk and act the same way as you, an organization of mini-me's. You want diversity of thought. At the same time, we also want an industry which has got equality, access to all, that gives people a fair chance to get ahead, whatever background they're from. So I think we certainly need to try and support leaders of production companies to move away from a little black book approach to recruiting and just going back to the, always going back to the same networks. But there are ways in which we can do outreach. We can work with local networks, communities that represent people who from disadvantaged or minority groups. So I think there are things that can be done.
I'm a stickler for stop looking where you always looked. And it's not difficult to find people. It's not. I struggle when people say I can't, because again, that's a mindset. You can if you try. And if you're actively having this at the forefront of your mind that you want to diversify your pool, make inclusion a priority, promote belonging, there's all the letters and the names that you can add to it. If you're conscious about this, it's not hard.
So I just on that last point, I very much agree with you that we need to be aspirational. We need to recognize that all of us want to make our lives easier, not more difficult. We go to easy solutions. Sometimes it takes a more reflective approach to think, can I do this differently? What do I need to do differently? But I think we need to talk about the issues. So, we need to keep the conversation going, and we need to recognize that there are choices that we've got as managers. So, for example, with recruiting, we can just go back to our little black book and recruit mini-me's, or we can cast our net wider. There are ways that we can do that, and we have to, I think, be aspirational. And when I say have to, I think we need to, in order to ensure that the fantastic screen industries that we've got continue to thrive over the long term.
100% agree.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
I've enjoyed this one. Thank you, Jonny.
Pleasure. I've enjoyed it too.
Food for thought around those that are maybe new to managing others or new to the world of work. Talking openly around good, not productivity, but about what good looks like is really healthy and a really good foundational block for a healthy work culture.
That emphasis on checking in and getting used to saying to people, are you okay? How are things going? And not just limiting it to the task at hand, but seeing that slightly bigger picture to allow people to be good at their job. And I like that kind of sense of flexibility that as a leader, I need to find a way of being a good manager. But I've also got to make sure that it works within my team and my business. And if it doesn't, I'm going to start feeling that tension, because I'm going to always be working against that kind of sense of wellness that we all want to inhabit. But I think what Jonny was telling us from his research, it will make a better business, that will make you a better manager, that will make people happier. And all of a sudden you end up with a really good production, which in a way shouldn't be a surprise, should it? But hearing it in that way really does give you a bit of confidence, doesn't it? That it's worth the investment.
It's like a really obvious equation, but when broken down like that, of course that's going to equal a good production, a good company culture. It just makes sense.
And it's all about little interventions. It's not one big thing that you have to tackle on a Monday morning. It's about spending 5 minutes to make sure your paperwork, your contracts are fit for purpose and support that vision of good working practices. It's about having a think about recruitment for 5 minutes when next you've got a role to fill. So it's these little 5 minutes that all mount up into something that makes a really big difference, not just for you, but your team, your business, and the screen sector. Thanks for listening to the WorkWise for Screen podcast, supported by the BFI awarding National Lottery funding.
Our online platform provides lots of easy to understand information and invites to our events. Visit our website at workwiseforscreen.org.uk and register for the latest updates.
Please follow us on social media and join in this crucial conversation.
And contact us with suggestions for future episodes, or if you can, support the programme in any other way. This podcast is produced by 1860. Music is by Benjamin Squires.